worse than audio doesn't work well at all. This is the RPG Pundit again, the final boss in internet shitlords, and I'm here with Avenger Satanis and with Job, who is on thin ice in terms of his probation as the video guy of our crew. We promise that next time we will have a link up at least an hour before the show actually starts, and that we will share this on social media, and that we will figure out how to do this with all the microphones being on and for people to be able to hear it. Okay? So today, everybody can hear me, right? I'm just checking because I don't want to do this a third time, right? So answer in the chat if you can hear me, please. We're going to be talking mostly today about the wokeness at Wizards of the Coast, and relate a variety of related topics within that. But first, I thought we would do some promotion. Please, God, someone write in the chat that you can hear me, so I know for sure that I'm not just saying this and no one's listening. Anyone?
Okay. Looks like they can.
Hear. All right. Okay. And you've heard everything I've said so far, right? All right. So the first thing we're going to do is very briefly, Venger, no large spiels about your process. Just very briefly, what are you shilling before we begin our actual content?
Okay. What I'm shilling is the follow-up to Chalt, which is Chalt Fuchsia Malaise, is coming out real soon. The PDF should be out before July. And I'm also doing a series on my blog about adventure writing. So if you want to follow along, I'm doing a brand new adventure from scratch, and you get to see my entire process from start to finish. That'll be throughout the month of June. And just click on my blog and just read comments, follow along. My blog is Venger Satanis's old school gaming blog. And yeah. That's it.
All right. Excellent. Job, have you got anything that you're shilling?
Well, I'm shilling my products that are available on my website that is currently down. It's been down for several weeks, so I'm sure that's a huge shock to you guys out there that have some technical difficulties with my web store. But they will. It's going to return. I'm going to fix it.
All right. I suppose we should also, for in the context of stuff Job has done and done well, actually, unlike most of the day, is to shill this channel, because you've one thing that Job has been doing is we are now putting out clips of our episodes, kind of in the best style of like Joe Rogan or something like that. So, it's another reason to subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Another reason to support us on Patreon so that we can keep working on this and maybe pay for Job to take a Zoom tutorial or something. So please support us on Patreon. As for me, well, I'm still going with Star Adventure. I see in the chat, there's already someone that posted loving Star Adventure in anticipation that I was going to say that. It's done really, really well. I think it's probably getting close to the next rank of bestseller on drive-thru. So if you haven't picked it up yet, this is a great time to buy Star Adventure. It's RPG Pundit Presents number 100. But besides that, I can tell you that pretty soon, possibly even this coming week, RPG Pundit Presents number 101 will be out. And that's going to be a medieval authentic adventure called Tamlane. And it's based off of a really ancient fairy tale, a folk story that has versions of it in England, in Scotland, and in Wales. And so it's going to feature elves and the wild hunt and all kinds of interesting stuff that is based on a real centuries-old folk tale. And I think that anyone who wants to run an old school, in the sense of medieval authentic old school OSR adventure, is going to really like it. Anyway, so now let's get on to the topic. And the topic in a broad sense is looking at how Wizards of the Coast, in response to the pressure of the kind of current Black Lives Matter environment and the Antifa riots and everything else have been going out of their way to bend backwards about making important changes, because clearly if, you alter, if you alter the drow and the orcs in D&D, you will end racism. Racism only still exists because people are making orcs based on kind of mythical concepts rather than acting as though they were people, or something like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But here we are, and they are making commitments to doing this. Recently, Jeremy Crawford had said so first on his Twitter feed, and then they made an article about it on the Wizards website where they said that part of what they're going to do as a way to end racism in RPGs is that from now on orcs won't have penalties to intelligence, okay, and that they're not going to be evil anymore. That also drow are not going to be evil anymore, right? They're actually just they're basically humans in humanoid cosplay, right? There are going to be good orcs and bad orcs, presumably, and good drow and bad drow. And they're probably actually going to have this wonderful, diverse culture that is going to enrich anyone that they come to conquer, or things like that. And so this is the mentality that is currently running Wizards of the Coast. Before I add any more of my spicy commentary, I guess I'll turn it over to you two guys and tell me what you think about this newest development coming from Wizards.
You want to go first, Joe?
Take it away, Avenger.
Me? Okay. Yeah, anytime that you hear the words diversity or any of the woke, social justice warrior stuff, it's not going to be good for D&D. It's just catering to this small niche of very loud people on Twitter and wherever. It doesn't improve the game. It's just, it's for just people that are not smart enough to separate the D&D game from reality, I guess. So it's disappointing that this is like a big thing and had to be called out, but it's inevitable. D&D seems to be going the way with all major and mainstream publishers, not all, but a lot. And I don't know. I'm not sure how political we want to get here. Obviously, we can get very political, or we can just talk about our disappointment with whatever. I'm not sure what you guys feel like.
I just wanted to kind of respond to every single bullet point going down the site. I was trying to get the quotes to show up here, but I screwed it up. So I'll just have to go through them point by point. So
why spoil a perfect record so far?
Right,
John?
exactly. So the first bullet point in their whole diversity in D&D, and it's up on the Wizard site, is like, we present drow and orcs in a new light in 2 of our most recent books, yada yada. We'll continue this books. In those books, orcs and drow are just as morally and culturally complex as other peoples. We'll continue that approach in future books, and portraying all the peoples of D&D in relatable ways and making it clear that they're just as free as humans to decide who they are and what they do. The first thing I thought when I read that was why are they stopping at drow and orcs? Why not kobolds? Why not goblins? Why not every single monster? I mean, I guess this is the first.
Well, there's a simple answer to that
approach for
right?
equality, but they're falling short of their equity agenda here.
Here's the very simple answer to that is that the SJWs think that black people are like orcs or drow, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
In their minds, that's how they are. Let me put it this way. If you have one side that keeps seeing dog whistles all the time, that they keep hearing these dog whistles, you found your dog, right? They're the ones that keep thinking that orcs that drow are meant to be black people, because they think of the qualities of evil qualities that orcs and drow have, and they assume that those are qualities black people have, right? And then because they have this SJW ideology that is supposed to, that both treats black people as subhumans, but at the same time tries to say that therefore they need the protection of the white liberal elite, and need to be cared for and controlled by a government, right? That will help them, while at the same time understanding that they can't possibly be better than they are, right? This is the fundamental hypocrisy and racism of the SJW left that is at work. So, other demi-human races don't match their stereotype of the black person the way, the SJWs have of black people. So they're not really important to them. The important part to them is to show that they know that to them, they think that orcs and drow are black people. Right?
Yeah. So next are we going to get like widespread single mothers of the orc population, where the dads are just kind of like
hang on,
knocking the female orcs up and then just leaving.
Now listen, Venture. That is actually something that is very much the fault of, again, white liberalism in America, because before Lyndon Johnson and the New Society, right, before the welfare state became an institution in the United States, black families were extremely tight-knit, and all of local, urban black community was based on the family, on the value of the family, and they had huge family values in completely in tandem with most other cultures in America at that time. And what destroyed the family in black communities and black society, what caused unwed mothers was not something to do with their culture. It was to do with the fact that there was a financial incentive that the Democrats had put into place for women not to be married, because if you're married, you don't get the welfare check, right? So if you're a single mother, the government takes care of you. And they replaced the black father with the government welfare check and the social worker. And that's destroyed black communities in a bigger way than anything that happened since Jim Crow laws. It's absolutely a different kind of racism. It's racism with a caring face.
Yeah. Another thing I thought of with, why those particular two races is it's like some people have don't group things together in the way I would group them together, I guess, basically is what I'm trying to say. So like for drow, people doing cosplay as drow and getting in blackface, you guys know that's had, people have called, people dressing as drow, cosplaying as drow as being blackface for quite a while. And I feel like that's where the racism part in the whatever, I guess, more far left mind, but then with the orcs though too, it's they were described as brutish or something, and then this whatever, I don't know, whoever came up with this stuff, Chris Perkins or Wizards R&D, in their head, just like you were saying, they think of brutish as something that is associated with black or African Americans or something, Either way, I don't know.
Doesn't it go all the way back to Tolkien? Wouldn't people that were reading Lord of the Rings say that Tolkien was being racist because of... Well,
that's a claim that they've in fact made about Tolkien, and it's completely wrong. I mean, it's Tolkien, and the problem here is that postmodern society is incapable of understanding myth, right? Yeah. And I've talked about this in one of my videos on my channel. If you're not subscribed to my channel, be sure to do so and watch my very informative videos. But in what I pointed out is that in Western myth, the non-human is not used as a parallel for other races. It's used as a symbol, as a symbolic allegory of different moral qualities, right? So the orcs do not represent black people or some other people in Tolkien. They represent the corruption of sin, right? They were elves that were twisted and corrupted by sinister power and by the modern the machines of the dark forces, you know, and so they were turned into twisted versions of their former self, right? And remembering that Tolkien was a profound Catholic and that Lord of the Rings is a Catholic allegory, this is something you see all across the Catholic Middle Ages in all kinds of folk tales and legends, and going back to things like the witch mark and stuff like that, right? Is that sin is supposed to physically corrupt you. And in fairy tales and in legends and mythology, you see that over and over again. So that's what orcs are supposed to represent, right? Just like the elves represent this kind of corruption of pride in a way, right? And dwarves the corruption of greed. So they're people that are they're representative not of other races, but of what people would be like if they were driven by certain sinful qualities, right, or imperfections.
Sure. Or taking it to, you know, down the more Pomo road, it's otherness, right? But, you know, why not apply otherness to kobolds or owl bears or bugbears or hobgoblins or any other race in the game? The next thing they're going to get mad is that you can't call them monsters anymore.
Well, the deeper problem is that the relativism that was taught by the postmodernists, by people like Foucault and Derrida, means that you can't have effective allegory. You can't have symbolism. So the whole idea of symbolism in myth falls apart, and you have a whole generation that literally can't understand it, right? Like they can't even conceive of these concepts, and they don't speak the basic language of the West. The basic language of the West isn't English or Spanish or French or German. The basic language of the West is a language of symbols, right? Of the symbols of ancient European paganism, of Christianity, and of the folklore of the European world. And that was then elaborated on over the centuries by other people like William Shakespeare and Cervantes, who has just had his statue defaced in spite of the fact that he was literally a slave once, you know, and people like that, right? That were able to expand that into the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and even the modern period, right? But that can't happen anymore because a postmodernist, a relativist, can't think in anything but the most literal positivist terms. So to them, there's good, there's bad. Bad people are people who like the Orange Man, right, or who are intolerant, and you know, good people are everybody else, and you have to, you know, if you want to see an example of something written by people who have no concept of symbol, look at the new trilogy of Star Wars movies, especially the last two, right? Especially the second one. And you see there, it just turns, instead of having rich symbolic myth, what you have, which was what Star Wars used to be, right? Even as late as the 70s, you could still do that. But now the people who have grown up in the period since then are incapable of doing that. And what they produce is just leftist political propaganda as the shallowest of political metaphors, instead of having any kind of rich, deep symbolism. Anyway, to continue on our list, they then also mentioned the Vistani, which is kind of a Mott and Bailey approach, I think, because, I mean, the Vistani are different from other races.
Well, hold on. But there was, I was hoping you guys actually could clarify the second bullet point for me, because they said basically they're doing D&D book reprints, and that they, in the reprintings of Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd, we changed text that was racially insensitive. Does anyone even know what that is?
I don't know about Tomb of Annihilation, but presumably in the Curse of Strahd, it has to do with the Vistani, right? The Vistani are the Ravenloft version of gypsies. And there has been criticism that the Vistani are, you know, an ethnic stereotype, a cultural stereotype, and that they, you know, they play on stereotypes about the gypsy people. And I mean,
Sure,
that's very obviously true in one sense, right?
yeah, I mean, but I don't know. To me, that is also is like there is like a cultural appropriation, right? Because the Vistani are, I would say, I don't know what are you supposed to say? The Romani? No,
Yeah, Romani, the
Romani.
gypsies, yeah.
Yeah, they're it's based on Romani culture, but I don't know. I didn't read a lot of the Ravenloft stuff, a little bit of it, but I didn't. I mean, it was kind of their own thing. You know what I mean? They're just they filed off the serial numbers or whatever, but I mean, part of the sin there, I think, is cultural appropriation.
No, I think they're more worried about it being stereotypical. Romani people justifiably get really upset about the stereotype of, which have always been a fairly persecuted people throughout Europe, right? The gypsies have been seen as, sinister and criminal and things like that. And so it's completely understandable that they would be uncomfortable with that. Now, Ravenloft is not really based on any idea of what the Romani are supposed to really be like, or what they are really like, but rather it's playing off of the 19th century Gothic horror novel, like the original Dracula, and many other of these Penny Dreadful type stories that happened in the 19th century, which of course often feature gypsies as weird fortune tellers or sinister servants of the occult or things like that. Now, is it still proper to do that today? I don't know. I do think that it's a more questionable issue than the issue of orcs or drow. Orcs or drow aren't people, right?
Oh, definitely. Right.
Romani obviously are real people and they're a real culture, right?
Well, what I think they should do is they should retrofit their Vistani on just Midwestern like trailer trash, just like the poor white trash that just lives in Middle America. Just stereotype off them.
Yeah, well, because that's the only cultural group in America you're still allowed to insult, right?
Well, yeah, too. But I mean, how many gypsies are there really left in the world? Like 200-300?
No, there's quite a lot. They're all over Europe. There's, I think quite a lot of them in Romania to start with.
Maybe. I really don't know.
All right, so that's like the next bullet piece. The fifth one is basically, it says, we've received valuable insight from sensitivity readers on 2 of our recent books. So they're talking about they're going to include sensitivity readers in their creative process now. I'm shocked that they weren't doing that already. I thought they were. I mean, they're so, Wizards is so woke. It's kind of a shock that they haven't started doing anything like that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know if they were doing it before. I'm sure that they probably already had a code of conduct and they had, a trust and safety council and stuff like that. But maybe it hadn't. Maybe a lot of that was lip service, and maybe it's still lip service. Obviously, they're paying the Dane Geld to the SJWs, and the problem with that fundamentally is that SJWs hate D&D. That no matter how much you pay the Dane Geld, eventually the Danes are going to get you, right? They're not going to. There's no amount of tribute, no amount of cocksucking that Wizards of the Coast can do that is not going to end with the SJWs calling for the destruction of D&D, because D&D is fundamentally to them a representation of something outside of what they want,
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to what you're saying is like D&D is like mythic and symbolic, and if you don't understand or you don't understand that language, then according
to the philosophers they love, according to someone like Derrida, right, myth is unbelievably dangerous because all it does is it propagates a civilization and the values of the civilization that you want to tear down, that you want to deconstruct, right? So if you can destroy people's myth, if you can destroy everything from organized religion to fairy tales, and twist them around and show how, in fact, these things are actually evil. Therefore, you turn people against their own culture and their own civilization, and then you make that civilization collapse so you can create the glorious new socialist utopia.
Yeah.
This is why they go after every part of popular culture, right? Be it TV shows, comics, RPGs, young adult novels, everything.
Harry Potter.
To subvert them. Are there any other points?
Got anything to say on that, Venger?
Yeah, I just agree that I'm surprised Wizards didn't have that already. I'm surprised that just the general writers and functionaries over there aren't already so sensitive about everything that anytime they hear a little word that might be taken the wrong way, their ears don't prick up and they're like, oh my God, we're like 2 steps away from a hate crime.
Oh yeah, didn't they get in trouble over something to do with Chalt too?
Who? What?
Not Cholt. You know, the dinosaur.
Oh, right.
Oh, yes, the jungle area of the Forgotten Realm.
They got some heat over that
because they presented a culture there of black-skinned humans which was loosely based on kind of sub-Saharan African culture, and it was meant to be fairly respectful, but people said it was racist because black people in Africa should be like Wakanda, right? So they had to rewrite it into like this culture, super science that are the most powerful thinkers and powerful magicians in the entire world, because otherwise you're a racist, right?
Yeah.
So it's very funny, right? We got somebody who commented here in the live chat. Dracopol says, white characters can be serious, funny, buffoonish, good, evil, whatever suits the story. No one will ever whine about a character casting disrepute on the entire white race, right? And I think that's a very interesting point, because part of what this wokeism does, which again is a product of the white bourgeoisie, of the white middle class, of the overeducated trust fund babies, who have this. The whole thing is just to satisfy their masturbatory fantasies of being Che Guevara, right? So they, again, in their demands, are creating this situation where the only people who are allowed to be the full spectrum of human qualities as a character, be it in an RPG, be it in video games, in comics, or in movies, is somebody who's white, right? Because there are certain things that you're just not going to be able to have if a character, and white male mostly, right? Because a female character can't be anything other than strong and powerful, right? A transgendered character could not be anything other than stunning and brave, right? And characters of races that aren't white can't be anything other than the most nobly imaginable avatar, the paragon of perfection, right? Because if not, the SJWs are going to complain. They're going to call you a racist, right? So it means that everybody else except, white males are limited in how much humanity they can actually present and how fully human they can actually be, right? Because they can't be evil, they can't be stupid, they can't be imperfect. In some cases, they can't be ever afraid, they can't be, incapable in any way. So it's actually a horrifically devastating effect that it has on all of literature as it was, right, or the many varieties thereof, and in the presentation of characters. It means that all of these other groups, all the identity groups SJWs pretend to care about, will end up becoming unbelievably diminished in the scope of their humanity.
Wow. Okay.
All right, I've silenced you both. Sorry about that.
Well, I can't add anything into that. It was a pretty good rant.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the sixth and final bullet point is they're just saying they're proactively seeking new, diverse talent to join their staff and pool of freelance writers and artists. So, it used to be enough that you were gay or bisexual that they would hire you, but now, and if you think about it, I think they've only ever hired white people for as how woke Wizards is on the D&D side. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anybody that I know that's worked there.
Why would you not, at every opportunity, hire the best person for the job? no matter who they were, or what color of skin they had, or their sexual preference, or their gender. Like, if they're doing the best job for a reasonable amount, then hire that person. I mean, you don't have to go searching out for whatever. I mean, if someone puts out a resume and you interview them and they're the best candidate for the job, you hire that person.
Again, it's the underlying assumption that the SJW left has that most of the people that they think they need to protect are inferior, right? And couldn't possibly be the best person for the job. So you have to change how the rules go and allow these people to get in without consideration of their abilities, right? I think a lot of this.
It's like you're casting for a position, like, you know, like on a movie set or something. You know, you're not actually hiring a game designer, you know, or a book writer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't even understand this, like, this whole obsession people have with, you know, people's sexuality and race. I never even thought of that once. Of all the books I've read in my life or all the games I've played, I never like, I wonder if this guy likes it in the butt, or I wonder if this dude was black. Like, it's some trivia that you might find out later, like, oh, Mike Pondsmith, you know, was an African American male. That's interesting. But who cares? You know what I mean? He made a great game.
That's your white privilege talking, gringo. You know, as a Latino, I can tell you that all Latino gamers, what they really want are games that are just full of Latino people doing things like, you know, being gauchos or being narco-traffickers or things like that, or being, you know, poor people trying to cross the border. You know, and we don't want to play games like Star Wars or D&D or Vampire or any of that stuff, right? This is the supposed argument, right? Is that if you don't represent some kind of demographic group, then that demographic group won't be interested, which is complete bullshit, right? Because, like, you know, I live in Latin America, and Latino gamers play exactly the same games that everybody else plays, and they don't need to be pandered to at all, right? Like, there's nothing about any RPG that needs to be made special for Latinos, for example, you know?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What do you think, Venger?
I was reading the comments. What was the question?
Don't worry about it. Is there anything interesting in the comments you want to point out? Anyone say anything that you thought was worth sharing?
That meritocracy is racist, apparently.
Yeah.
And also we were talking about some of the artwork. Dan Vince had a serious question. If I thought the clowns at Wizards of the Coast actually knew a good job from a bad one. And I responded with, I think over there they must pull artist hat out of a hat. Artist names out of a hat, sorry. Because the artwork is really hit or miss throughout the D&D line. 5th edition, going back to 4th edition, even 3rd edition. I mean, not everything was great with 1st edition or 2nd edition, but I think on the whole, that D&D was far superior artistically to the semi-good, semi-garbage that we have now.
I don't know. I think D&D has always had a tradition of combining really amazing with really shitty art. Like, if you page through the 1st edition books, you'll find a lot of unbelievable 70s art and then a bunch of really, really bad 70s art, right? And the 2nd edition period, don't even get me started, where you have like fat middle-aged men holding up a tiny dragon, you know, and they're very clearly like somebody drew their friends there in Wisconsin, you know, and made them into fantasy characters, and it looks like just so unbelievably crappy, you know, like it's just the most anti-heroic thing possible. But then there are some 2nd edition artworks that are really amazing too, right?
If that's the piece, if you're talking about the piece that I think you are, I think that was voted one of the best pieces of 2nd edition art, like, of all time.
Well, people have no taste.
And pundits crapping on it. So send your hate mail to RPG Pundit.
Don't dox him. Come on.
Look. The thing is that I think some people have really, I don't know, maybe it really appeals to a certain type of middle class gamer from Middle America, but to me it seems to be a destruction of the heroic ideal, right? Just as much as a lot of the, when people insist, when SJWs insist on like superheroes being fat or female superheroes being intentionally ugly, because that's supposed to like be diverse. But the point is, you don't want to you don't want to see an action movie starring a guy that looks a lot like you. You want to see an action movie starring Bruce Lee, right? Like you want to see people in an idealized form, and that's a natural product of human nature, right? That in art we seek what is ideal, not some kind of Soviet realism or something like that, and this was not Soviet realism, but maybe it was like Reagan era realism or something. It looked like someone took a picture of a bunch of guys who'd gone fishing and just changed the fish for a very small dragon.
Yeah,
anyway.
but at the same time, not every piece of art needs to be this grand, sweeping, epic, mythic kind of thing.
Well, D&D
sometimes it just has to capture like the essence of the game.
Yeah, but the essence of the game is heroism, right? Like D&D should be epic. Maybe not always heroic in the sense of good versus evil, but it should look really freaking epic, right?
For second edition, I would agree with you. But I mean, if you look at a lot of old school D&D, just like the new stuff with the retro clones, like Dungeons and Crawl Classics, their main tagline is, or at least it was, that you're no hero. You're like, I don't know, a cut purse.
A cut purse.
Yeah, but the art is still epic. Sometimes it's epic cut purse stuff, right? Like you look at the cover of the original player's handbook, right, with the thieves trying to steal the jewel from the demon's head idol, right? Like that's not really heroic, but it is like an epic, iconic image, right? It's an idealized image of what the D&D experience of the dungeon crawling kind of scummy rogues is like, right?
But then you look at the back of the cover, and it's just a bunch of guys carrying out lizardmen bodies, and picking up sweeping up the bird poop that was left over from the raid. I don't know.
Not as iconic, right? And not as memorable either,
Right. But you got the two faces. You got the iconic, epic, mythic, and then you got the realistic, which is, you're not a hero, maybe. You're just kind of like a regular guy, like a lovable loser. Like in Dodgeball, you're like the main character. His name escapes me.
While you're thinking, let me point out, in my DCC campaign, which is one of the longest running DCC campaigns in the world at this point, right, and has some of the highest level characters, my characters, the entire theme of The Last Sun is failure, right? Like it's a world that's filled with people who have failed, and the player characters are a bunch of failures, right? Like they're losers, but they are epic losers, right? Like they've done epic things in disastrous ways that often makes things worse than when they began. But everything they do is over the top, right? And I think that should be the kind of the essence of the non-heroic D&D, right? You could also have like the ideal, like Lion and Dragon is the ideal D&D. Look at the cover of my Lion and Dragon image, right? It's got these, these majestic heroic medieval knights, right? Which is kind of the Arthurian ideal. So I think those are the two sides of what D&D art should be. But there's never really a good excuse to have D&D art that's banal, That's where you get the problem. Whether it's banal in the modern SJW sense or otherwise.
Rendered. If it looks like the artist like literally spent 10 minutes making it on his computer, that pisses me off. I'd rather have
like crappy digital art,
really well done. Like it's got a lot of heart in it, but it's just a pile of bodies. Like nobody's doing nothing. Just a pile of dead characters. I'd rather see that really well done rather than, some dude pulling a sword from the stone, and there's wizards that are like shooting fireballs at dragons. But it looks like, like it's all smudgy and like it's got, it's just like crapped out in maybe an hour or so, with, there's good
That's
art.
fair. That's fair. You don't want shitty art, no matter what the theme is. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. Any other points on their list there, Job?
That's their last one. But I did want to throw in one more thing. I just couldn't figure out a good spot to jump in. Is as far as diversity type of initiatives. I mean, one place I think is totally valid is in artwork. Definitely if you go back through some of your books and you're like, oh shit, I just drew every page is 99% white adventurers or something. I can definitely see a reason for trying to be more inclusive in the artwork, because when you look at the art, it's when you kind of project yourself into the game. But as far as who creates shit, I don't care what you are.
What about the demographics though? Like, I don't know what the numbers are, but let's say that 80% of people that play D&D are straight white males.
Right. Yeah.
At what point do you just kind of like shoot yourself in the foot economically, or you just like go out of your way to try too hard to have more diverse characters and artwork? Like, I don't know where that line is. Like,
for me, it becomes very. I think it's very basic, and I think that this is something that people overlook, right? Like, I mean, when I look at a piece of fantasy art in a D&D game or some other RPG product, and it has a person that is neither, Northern European or Latino, that doesn't look like me, that doesn't make me want to play the game any less, right? Like, I mean, if I see some black hero or an Asian looking wizard, that I don't suddenly look at it and go, well, I don't feel represented by this, right? I think, oh, that guy's badass, right? He's fighting that giant, and it looks like it's going to be a really tough battle for him, right? And I can identify with the heroism, with the values of what's being presented there. Or if it's like, some guy that's about to do a sneak attack, I go, and then he looks, again, it's a woman or something like that. A female thief is about to kill a guard, right? I'm like, oh, she looks badass, right? Like, this is somebody who's going to be competent, right? And I can imagine my own character doing that, whether or not my own character would look like that, right? So I don't think that representation takes anything away from me. And I think that the idea that you have to have your own demographic represented is where there's a big error there, right? Like, I mean, again, I don't think any Latino in any game, any of the gamer Latinos I know would be like, well, in the D&D book, I don't see any Latinos, so I don't want to play D&D. I've never heard anyone say that, or I feel excluded even. They never say that, right? Because you just don't think in those terms, right?
And I think,
normal person, you look at that and you look at the message that the art is trying to convey, not anything else. When I look at, Asian art, and I've done a lot of study of Asian art, right? And you see what are clearly Chinese people in Asian art doing interesting things, whatever they're doing in the art, whether it's meant to be a depiction of man versus nature, or the isolation or the vastness of the world, or, battle scenes or stuff like that. I never think, oh, well, I can't relate to this because I'm white,
Right.
But I do think that what really needs to matter is the content of what you're making, what the art is for, right? So D&D is generic fantasy, and it can definitely include all varieties of skin tones or whatever, because it's just fantasy world. It's not really medieval Europe. It's not really anything, right? So you can put it all in there. And that's not a problem. But the issue is that a game should reflect the setting that it's trying to present. So, for example, I wouldn't put, Black or Native American characters in the artwork of Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion, because that doesn't fit the setting.
Because you're a racist,
right? No, it's not because I'm racist. When I did
no, I know,
Heroes of
I'm
Indra,
joking. I know.
I didn't put in any white characters in Heroes of Indra. I pointed out to people, you cannot find a single white character. You can't play a white character in Heroes of Indra, right? And
No, that's racist.
It's entirely Indian, right? And it's all Indian characters, right? Because that's what fits the setting.
Right.
It's also the first RPG, in case you guys didn't know this, because I didn't used to promote it all the time, but now I mention it every time I can because it pisses off the SJWs. It was the first RPG to feature a transgender hero on the cover, right? So Arrows of Indra is a groundbreaking.
That's not exactly true, Pundit, because there was some sci-fi game where there was a post-human, and that post-human might have been transgendered beneath his post-human
That's
pants.
right. It's a possibly hermaphroditic monkey in a transhumanist game, and they claim that.
Yeah, transhumanists are
just to not have like very
too.
clearly human, transgender wizard on the cover of Arrows of Indra.
Right.
Be the first,
Sorry, I just had to throw out the internet.
No, that's good. That's good to remember how much SJWs have pundit derangement syndrome, to the point of view that they would rather the first transgender hero be a monkey than be a character on the cover of one of my books.
Oh my God. So I agree with you guys. I mean, it's a fine line. I mean, in some settings, there's no way, if you're doing the setting properly, you can't do it. I in most cases, if you're doing generic fantasy, I think the number is not 0, but there is a point when it's like pandery and kind of insulting. But there's also, you don't want to break immersion either. I mean, look at like Game of Thrones. I mean, some of those later episodes where they have like female children as warriors and stuff, and it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, a White Walker would just stomp on that bitch's head and just keep going, like, or Arya jumping out of the nowhere and stabbing.
Wait! Are you shit talking Lyanna Mormont? Are you seriously shit talking?
I am.
If
it's
she
ridiculous.
had 3 dragons, that series would have been over immediately. She was the most badass character in that series.
Come on, give me a break. And again, children fighting, unless they're like in, I don't know, have the AK-47 in the back of the tactical and the sand dunes. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, usually when children are fighting in war, it's like The Patriot with Mel Gibson. Like, they're the first to go down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, why you keep
if you have guns,
There's
okay.
a bunch of Congolese armies that would disagree with you, my friends. The reason that the child soldiers are recruited all over Africa is that it's very easy to end up it's harder to turn an adult male into someone who's okay with taking other people's lives than it is to take a child and convince them to do that. Because a child will lose the sense of context, right? And so for them, it just becomes completely normal to murder anyone and to do it in very cold blood, right? Whereas a person who has lived long enough to really understand life and death has a lot more trouble with that.
Doesn't
and there were very young,
are more stupid.
If you put an 8-year-old girl in scale mail armor if you gotta put an 8-year-old girl in scale mail armor, fuck my. Sorry.
I know. They're easily programmed. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, in the Middle Ages, I can't think of somebody of a very famous, member of royalty or the aristocracy who was a child warrior as such. But there probably were some. But it was very common in mercenary companies and in armies for relatively very young soldiers to be there, right? Like there were a lot of people who started their military careers around the age of 12 in the Middle Ages.
Yeah,
that's
I would love to see the general that
12
had
is
to put
more believable.
Soldiers to bed at night after a long day of fighting. Like that would have taken 2 hours of his life. He would have ripped out his hair by then.
The difference is back then you could beat them. You could savagely beat them until they obeyed you, right? And that's still true in Africa, right? So that's why the child soldiers are there, right? So it's a very different culture from the culture of childhood today.
We don't beat our kids, and that's why they walk all over us.
All right.
I am
Well,
the
there
enemy
you are,
that
everyone.
my child soldiers are fighting.
All I'm
Usually
saying
water guns, but
is if you take an 8-year-old chick and put scale mail and give her a bastard sword, like that just breaks immersion for her. I don't think that chick is going to do anything.
No, I mean, that's true. Yes. Okay. Right. Like the idea of a hand-to-hand melee fighter who's a little girl is a little dubious, right?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Carl Mariner in our live chat just pointed out the King of Jerusalem was 14, was king at 14 and won a great military victory at 16. He wasn't at the front lines of that, to be fair, right? King Richard the Lionhearted was killed by a crossbow bolt from a 15-year-old mercenary, right? And that's also true.
Well, 15 is 15 compared to that.
15 is already quite a bit older, sure.
Yeah. But I don't know. Shit, they don't even have birth control. Like what? I would think that in Game of Thrones they don't have birth control back then. I mean, or
presumably not.
Or is any way to deal with menstruation? What do they do? Just like tie a mouse to their crotch or something? Like, I don't know.
How would that even work?
I don't
Medieval
know.
menstruation methods. Yeah.
Well, that's medieval authentic. So, come on, you're the history buff here, Pundit.
No, I mean, in the Middle Ages, you basically used rags, right? Like that's where on the rag comes from, right? And it is a tricky, it was one of the great innovations of the modern West, and something that was enormously important to women's health was the advancement in the development of sanitary technology for menstruation, among other things, and of course birth control, because in the Middle Ages there was an enormous number of women who died in childbirth, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
All right.
That's quite a weird sidetrack that this conversation suddenly took.
Yes. Anyway, going back just for a second, I would love to see like a diversity of the adventuring party represented in some artwork. Like if you see,
they've been doing that since
Conan the Destroyer.
Okay.
You got like the Asian guy, and you got Conan himself. You got Grace Jones, the black woman. You got the little thief guy. Maybe he's Irish, maybe he's a gypsy, who knows?
And everybody loved it, right? Like there was nobody who thought that was, like if SJWs were to be believed, nobody would have liked that movie because, straight white males would never watch it, right? Because of how diverse it was, which is just complete bullshit, right? Just like Star Trek, right? Star Trek was in the 1960s and it had a diverse cast, right?
Yeah.
And people loved it, right? So it's a complete lie, this idea that, there's never been diverse representation in media, or that straight white males would be opposed to diverse representation in media. It's just nonsense, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Agreed.
All right. So what else do we got tonight? Is that it? Or...
No, we got another thing to talk about. Before we do, though, I spent a lot of time that I should have been spending figuring out the audio, figuring out how to get automatic subscriber alerts. So somebody out there, you got to subscribe, please. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed so we can see something happen.
Should I subscribe?
Yes, subscribe.
Are you telling me you're not subscribed?
You're not subscribed, dude? What the hell?
I've already subscribed, and I rang the bell apparently because I see a little line on either side of the bell. So we're all good.
You're already subscribed?
Yes.
Okay, well,
If there's anybody
unsubscribe.
watching
I just
right now,
realized
not
that this is our old
subscribed,
channel.
Subscribe now.
So I subscribed like 6 months ago.
All right. Well,
all right, I
that's
got to
good.
Venger.
I'm glad to hear
Unsubscribe, Venger. Unsubscribe and then resubscribe. See what happens.
All right, I'm subscribing.
All right.
I'm subscribed. Now I'm resubscribing. And I'm clicking the bell again.
God damn it.
All.
Nothing happened.
Technical issues here. I think if you click it and then you click it again, like Google doesn't really accept it.
Maybe.
Hey, there it goes.
Oh, it
The
did something.
power.
What did it do? I didn't
Watch
see it.
watch on the stream in like 30 seconds.
Oh, okay.
It goes,
All right.
on this like goat-headed demon comes out with a sword.
Really?
Real.
Yeah. You
So that's going to
can-
happen anytime that we
sounds cool.
subscribe.
You guys
I
can-
Somebody
see that.
subscribes.
Yeah, you can
Oh,
only
yeah.
see it on
yeah,
the
I see
stream.
it.
Oh,
I
that's
see it.
cool.
All right,
Hey,
so here you go,
motherfuckers,
guys. If you want to
subscribe.
if you want to be honored by subscribing while we're still live, this is the moment to do it.
There you go.
Where did that come from?
Everybody
That
wants
became
to
immortal.
raise
goat dude with a
subscribe,
sword.
nothing can be done about
Uh,
it. But here's your chance, guys. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so we'll be able to inform you ahead of time when we're going to be doing another program, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, let's just keep going
We
until
get
it gets
some-
embarrassing here. But if someone hasn't subscribed, then you should do it as soon as you can. Or you can fuck with us by subscribing over and over while we're trying to talk, and then we're going to hear this demon over and over in our ears. Okay, so we got our next topic, right? We wanted to talk here about wizards ending their relationship with a 25-year Magic the Gathering artist, Therese Nielsen. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. Did you guys read up on those articles?
I did, yeah.
I do not do the homework.
I'm not a Magic the Gathering guy, so I don't know anything about her. But from what I read, apparently she was an artist that was very well liked by the Magic crowd.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, from what I understand, her inexcusable crime. And by the way, she's also apparently a lesbian. I don't know anything about her race, or maybe she's a white lesbian. I don't know. But so she liked. I'm sorry. She followed Mike Cernovich, Jack Posobiec, and Infowars.
Jack Posobiec.
Posobiec. Sorry, I don't follow these
It's
people.
okay. And Infowars. I
And
follow all
Infos.
three of them.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
So
no, actually, I don't follow Infowars. That's not true.
yeah, that's a little bit too far.
I
But
do follow some people associated with Infowars, but not Infowars itself.
so that's a great crime, and apparently she got called out by people for like 2 years over this thing.
Is she a conservative?
No,
I don't know.
No,
She might be.
I believe that she's a trans-exclusive radical feminist. Right?
Oh yeah, that was her other crime.
So this is the thing. There is a division between kind of some of the second wave and the third wave feminists. Third wave feminists being the SJW feminists. Second wave feminists were feminists that were very much about the idea of woman as a gender, right? And the significance of women and women's spaces and that sort of thing. And there was a movement, even as far back as the 70s, going forward, that had very serious issues. I forget which of them it was. If it was Betty Friedan, it might not have been. I could be remembering wrong. That had described in the late 70s or early 80s, from her perspective. I'm talking about what she thinks. I'm not saying this is what I think, right? That transgendered male to females are actually a kind of ultimate attempt to appropriate the space of women by using the stereotype of what women have to be, right? That they dress up in fancy dresses and act ultra feminine. And that the furthest extent of this being if they have sexual reassignment surgery, that's basically the male castrating himself as a way to enter and appropriate female spaces, right? So there's been this point of view within feminism for many, many decades. There was always people that were agreed and disagreed, right? But that was stronger in the second wave of feminism that felt that transgender people, male to female transgender, could not be accepted into feminist spaces, right? And then this has had a huge backlash against those feminists by the SJW feminists in the last several years that have been, in many cases, creating some very odd, strange bedfellows, you could say, right? Like feminists like Julie Bindel in the UK, and Camille Paglia and others who have ended up finding that they have more in common with the intellectual dark web and the kind of cultural libertarian sort of right than they do with the SJW left because of this, right? And there's been a huge movement in the last year or two of trying to cancel all of these people, right? To get rid of the SJWs, saying that that anyone who questions the entirety of any part of the trans ideology, if you would, not transgender people even necessarily, but any single point within their SJW ideology about trans people needs to be eliminated, right? And as Judd Goswick just pointed out in the live chat, one example of someone who's being canceled for this right now is J.K. Rowling too, the Harry Potter person.
Oh yeah, we should go back to the chat.
Who made the point of trying to argue, well, biological sex is a reality, and that is enough for canceling J.K. Rowling and trying to
fighting words,
destroy her. Yeah.
Well, let me. Are we just giving our take on this? Is that what we're doing?
Well, I guess I want to add one more thing. Is that the nicest man in D&D officially, Matt Mercer of Critical Role, recently posted a tweet saying that if you question any part of ideology, then you shouldn't follow him and you should get out of his community, by which he means the D&D hobby, of course, because he's in charge of who should be in or out of it, right? But he's the nicest guy in all of D&D, such a nice, caring person, right? But this is now the second time he's declared that people should be forcibly removed or receive forcible therapy or stuff like that. The last time was with Joe Kavanaugh, right? Judge Kavanaugh, I mean, and the idea of believe all women, that anyone who doesn't believe all women should be thrown out of the D&D hobby. Funnily enough, he still hasn't pointed out that he believes Tara Reid and thinks that Joe Biden should be canceled. I'm waiting for Matt Mercer to do that. He still hasn't done it.
All the rest. But getting into the issue at hand, because I do have to go in a few minutes. Okay. I'm all for people to be able to do what they want, but I don't think that men that either become or identify as women should be able to play in like women-only sports, and I don't think kids should be experimented upon or given drugs or have surgery that alters their gender going into adulthood. And I don't think we should bend over backwards for anybody. Anybody can be ridiculed and made fun of or criticized or taken down a peg. It doesn't matter what you are or who you are.
Right. I think what you're trying to say,
right, everybody gets to enjoy or
sure. I think
depending.
I think what you're trying to say, Venger, too, is that that you respect the rights of trans people as humans. We can't be forced to just accept trans activist ideology, which is a totally separate thing. And honestly, I'm not even sure that it represents the interests of trans people sometimes.
Any kind of special interest where you close yourself off into this niche and then you want special privileges or special rights. Anybody could do that. I could do that as a secure, tentacled, green-skinned alien humanoid. I could be like, well, I need my own bathroom and I need my own, instead of getting a spoon and a fork and a knife or a spork or something like that, when I go to McDonald's, now I need a whatchamahoosit that's like this whole totally special utensil that's just for us, and you got to provide that, or else you're could be in trouble with the federal government or something like that. People should just be okay with what they have, and I don't know. I just don't want to cater to any special interest group that tries to go above and beyond to get more of the rights that we all should have.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Joe, anything to add?
I forgot the hell we were talking about. Oh yeah, I do have something to add. So I got more crimes. The crimes of Therese Nielsen. She also apparently sent some free prints to some YouTube channel called Edge of Wonder. Have you guys heard of that?
Can't say I have.
It's,
Maybe our
Nope.
people on the chat have heard it.
But the article says it's this is the quote: racist, QAnon, and conspiracy-focused YouTube channel, Edge of Wonder. So that's some really great framing. But I mean I don't know anything about it, but if they're openly racist, I would imagine that they would get kicked off of YouTube or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I on Twitter I follow the Atlantic, and I also follow Bill Kristol just to shitpost at him, and if someone I can't imagine anyone on the right saying, "Oh, RPG Pundit follows the Atlantic magazine and Bill Kristol, and so he should be canceled," right? You'd never see that happening from the other side, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I do also follow a number of people who are LGBT or trans, and usually ones that are cultural libertarians, but not always. Sometimes it might just be that they make interesting posts, and so I'll follow them, right? And this idea of this like constant thought control is just the real problem, right? Like the fundamental thing I think that we can all agree on is that it's a stupid reason for firing this artist. From what I understand, She's a very well-known fantasy artist, and she probably won't, starve to death or anything, right? Like she's not gonna not find other work. But the very notion of firing her for who she follows on social media, that's Stalinism in action.
Right. Actually, you're reminding me that this is one thing I always thought of as like, conversion therapy for like homosexuality or whatever, is definitely a no-no, but but somehow it's like they don't recognize that someone could be born with a conservative mind. So like, what's the difference between someone that thinks that they were born in the wrong body, or someone's political convictions happen to be more to the right side of the spectrum. You know what I mean? Like I don't see a big difference between being trans or being conservative or being liberal or whatever it is. But I don't. I just think you should just let people be who they're going to be, and unless they're like openly doing something that's harming society.
I'd have to think about that, and I'd rather go by the point of view of free speech and free expression, right? Not necessarily any of these things are really inborn qualities as such. I mean, obviously, race is an inborn quality, right? And the biological sex you're born with is an inborn quality, and that some people will have a fluid. A gender identity that doesn't easily fit into the traditional Western gender identities, because those are a construction. There's no question about that. If you're a historian, you look at other cultures throughout history and the definitions of what was male and female, and the fact that there were also in many cultures categories in between those two. Those things do vary throughout history, right? Like, for example, the idea
there are always edge cases, though, or else those cultures
no,
wouldn't
not
be
always.
here.
I mean, because the thing is, like, the very idea of homosexuality in the modern world, it includes a bunch of concepts that would not have really fit into the concept of homosexuality in the Greco-Roman world, for example, even in the West, right? So a lot of this stuff is a product of culture, and we don't really, and again, if it's, any individual should have the right to do whatever they want with themselves and with their own bodies if they're mentally capable and of age, right? There's to me, that's something that I see as a fundamental value, right? And that there should be no attempt to criminalize that or castigate it, right? As long as they're not hurting anyone else or doing anything that that involves forcing anyone else, right? But the idea that we have to follow this very strict and defined definition that a group of people have decided this is what we must all cheer for, that's where I get to the problem. Enforced speech
definitely.
is where the problem is, right?
Yeah, definitely. Or just that it can't, like it's already settled. Like, no, there hasn't been a debate. Like, I don't know, allowing, transgender children or something. Like there recently hasn't been a debate about that. In certain, countries, the government has kind of allowed that to go forward and push it down into the school level and stuff like that.
Whenever in history someone says this is already settled, it means it's dogma, right? Like,
exactly.
Science is settled. Well, no, the entire point of science is that it's constantly evolving, right? That there's that you constantly re-examine theories and that it is a work in progress, right? And the same thing with culture and society. So as soon as a movement goes from saying, well, let's question the dogma, to saying this is the new dogma and now you must obey it, right? That's a movement that has jumped the shark, right? That they've already failed, they've just become what they always opposed before, and that's why I don't identify as someone on the left anymore now. because they've now become the new dogmatists,
Once you awaken the silent majority, I think then you're going to see like, oh, okay, there's too much pushback. Now we're going to stop. Like there was this story a few months ago where there was this young kid, I think it was a boy, and his parents were getting divorced, and the dad, wanted just a normal life for his son. And then the wife wanted the boy to become a girl and was trying to encourage this boy to adopt a female identity, and wanted to go through the whole thing with not only dressing like a girl, but, taking drugs and, changing hormones and things like that to get on the path to become an actual female one day. And then I would see these articles like pop up on Google and on YouTube and things like that. And then more news outlets would carry it on YouTube and whatnot. And eventually I think there was just so much, there was a judge involved. And I think at first they were going to let the mother decide, and they were going to go ahead with this and turn the boy into a girl. But then there was so much attention on it. And then the middle of the country, just kind of came together and raised their voices. And all of a sudden that got struck down, and the husband was going to get either more control or equal control. And they were going to put a stop to the mother's intention to transform this boy into a girl. And I think things like that need to happen. You can just get some sort of either control or rational judgment going, because you just listen to people screaming on Twitter, and you can go as radical as you want. But once you raise the attention to the rest of the world or the rest of the United States, then things are going to change back to a more normal reset.
Yeah, that was a case in Texas, I believe. I want to comment on something in the live chat here. Vesuvius said gender being partially constructed, but there are some commonalities across culture, males being drawn to things, females being drawn to people, etc. Obviously there are elements of biological sex that affect, in broad terms of general population, certain things that you can say about male and female, right? Both in terms of things like physical strength and in terms of kind of the structure of thought and the brain and things like that, right? But those are obviously averages, right? Because there can of course be women that are much more about things and abstract concepts, and men that are much more about social elements and people and all of that sort of stuff. But yes, there are some parts of gender that are undoubtedly tied to biology as well. But again, those are broad strokes, and there's no reason why any of that should be enforced on any individual, or why trying to do the opposite should be enforced on individuals, right? And ultimately, any of those such attempts tend to fail, which is why you see that in very prosperous societies, where you would think that in a society where women have the freedom to study whatever they want, you'd see more women going into things like STEM. And in fact, the opposite is the case. In third world countries, you have a higher percentage of women taking degrees in things like STEM, because that's where they can make money, and it's an economic necessity for them to do so. And in more prosperous societies, you consistently have less women as a percentage of women overall taking STEM, because it's not their first choice, right? So, but should that mean that we shouldn't let women be in STEM? Obviously, we should, right? Anyone who wants to you should get a STEM degree, and it's probably going to be more useful than a culture studies degree or something like that anyways.
Yeah, actually, I don't even understand why they push STEM so much. I mean, I know I've got a few friends that that work in labs and stuff. Like they do hard science. They get paid nothing, man. It's really sad. Like, they got PhDs and they had to pay for those degrees, and they get paid like $50,000 a year and stuff. And I'm just like, why? I mean, I guess that's what you want to do, and that's what you want to devote your life to. But I don't know why they would try to push more women towards STEM. Like engineering, computing side of it, I think there's like higher salaries, but the rest of STEM, I don't think that pays very well. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, in third world countries, if you have a degree in science or medicine or engineering or stuff like that, it definitely opens up a lot more doors for you maybe than in the first world.
Well,
in terms of relative salaries and things like that.
Yeah.
And job security is important too. But anyway, so I guess that's the major points we're trying to make here as far as this is concerned. And it is very stupid that Wizards is continuing along this kind of path. It shows that the people in charge of Wizards, I think my biggest beef comes back down to the topic of orcs and drow, that they really don't understand any of the fundamentals of myth or any of the point of what, they want to get rid of the struggle of good versus evil. And I said this like 2 years ago. I did a video where I said that SJWs want every RPG setting to look like 2018 Seattle, right? And that's boring, right? It's fundamentally a boring, stupid choice. Someone on here said that there's going to be an upcoming Wizards of the Coast setting. I can't find who said it right now, but it's going to be called the Archipelago of Gulagium, and well, that's where they want to head, right? Eventually, everything's got to be about supporting the Stalinist line, and it's only going to be a matter of time until these products, if the tide doesn't turn, until these products are really only going to be about teaching you woke culture and not about actually being good RPG products. And that's how everybody's going to lose as far as Wizards of the Coast is concerned.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you remind me too. I don't know, I think it was buried in one of the bullets. I think I skipped over it, but I'm pretty sure there's something about changing the stats for dwarves and orcs and stuff. Wasn't that in there too? Do you remember reading that? Oh, Venture's back.
Yeah, I think so. There was that.
And the game I'm working on, actually, I forgot to tell you guys about this. I think I talked to you about it before, Pundit, but I'm working on this this RPG called Brutal Blades, and that's one of the things in that game I have like different roles for different races and even sexes, but those were based on basically I when I first started it was like I did a kind of alternate. I was working on an alternate 5e that the math was compatible, but it was totally a different game system, so that you could use the stat blocks and play my game instead of theirs. But I got to a point where I didn't want to do that anymore. But when I was working out all my racial stats and stuff, I took like the +2 here for the various races, and and kind of, I don't know, deconstructed that, because I basically took it as it was like, the human is your base level, and then these other races, like, they have +2 because that's in comparison to being a human, right? And so that's where I kind of started out with my whole how to set up stats and stuff like that. But even when I was working on that design element, I guess, in character creation, I was thinking that like, how could wizards be doing this? Because they could be running into, it's racist to say that these different races have different abilities, like, out the gate,
Right, like strengths and weaknesses, and racial preferences, things like that. It is kind of racist, I guess. I mean,
well, I don't know. I mean,
back in the day, racist is like one of the worst things that you can be called in society, because that's supposed to be like the worst thing, which is why we use it as a joke, like, oh my God, that's racist. But to treat races differently and be somewhat prejudiced, like that one guy that Bob Bledsaw, I don't know if it's the second or the third or something like that.
Second, yeah.
I mean, he got canceled just because, he made some stereotypical, like, old person Fox News watching comments, and then said
I
something
don't
about
think those
Jews.
were very typical.
And then,
I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I don't think those were very typical of a Fox News watcher. I've never heard any of the people there on, the Five or Tucker Carlson suggest that the Holocaust was a myth, or that.
done? I'm not doing that. Whatever.
Or that, or to say disparaging things about Black people,
yeah,
that was an example of a real racist, and that's the problem, is that
Was he disparaging? I mean, it's been a few months ago, so I don't even remember exactly what he said. I just remember it wasn't that horrible.
And extremely anti-Semitic, and that's the problem, is that when you redefine racism as anyone who disagrees with you even a tiny bit, it means that it makes it a lot harder to point out when someone is actually being racist,
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, his comments were definitely far beyond, but I still don't agree with him being canceled, or with, shutting people down for expressing even their crazy ass views. That was, I think that was all started by Eric Tenkar, wasn't it? Like, I follow Tenkar's I think he started the whole thing, and I don't know why he wants to cancel people. I mean, the guy, I don't know. His views are gross, but I mean, I guess.
And now you have riots in the streets. And looting, and people tearing statues down of like people that were on the Union side of the Civil War, and Lincoln and Churchill. And it's not just the United States. It's like, apparently Black Lives Matter everywhere, which isn't really Black Lives Mattering. It's like socialism and communism.
I don't know. I guess what I was trying to say, the biggest thing the biggest thing I was trying,
just a normal issue, like all lives matter, and everybody wants to see crazy out of bounds police brutality and extreme stuff like that, shut down. But it's all got to be like this big political agenda. And
I guess the reason I don't agree with it is that, I guess they stalked somebody, like friended someone on Facebook and grabbed all their comments to like, I mean, it doesn't have great views, but I guess the biggest reason I don't agree with a lot of this cancel culture stuff is, no man or woman is an island. I mean, the guy inherited the IP from his family or whatever. I mean, I don't know, maybe he's supporting his mother with Alzheimer's off of that money, or his kids are, radical left-wing people, SAWs or whatever, that depend on his income from this. I don't know. I don't agree with canceling people over their views.
Right. It's a matter of degree, too.
It's not compassionate. I mean, I guess one of the things is, like, my grandparents were like so racist. I was just like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, But if it was 50 years ago, maybe my grandparents would have gotten canceled, and I couldn't go to college. And now,
Right.
now I was like, well, fuck everybody. Fuck this shit. I'm just gonna go out and burn cars or whatever the fuck I'm gonna do. So I don't know. The guy's views are gross, but I don't think you should cancel people. Nobody is an island, and you don't know what is going on, and you can't give, also it doesn't give people a chance for redemption. There's no way back from it. So
He didn't seem too keen to redeem himself. Let me put it that way.
No, yeah, I saw that too. I don't think he's unrepentant, and I'm not defending this guy at all.
No,
I hope that's understandable. I'm just speaking out against cancel culture, even in the grossest case. I really just I don't think it's appropriate.
Right.
Maybe I just have too much compassion for people. All right, have a good one, man.
I will bid you guys adieu.
All right, we'll close up then.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife is calling me. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
Take care, Vander. Remember, be sure everyone to support us on Patreon so that Venger can stay up later and so we can keep making programs and again so we can have Job take a class and how to set up the video.
Please, I need a class of something.
That's right. We have to pay for his education,
Get Job some class.
So be sure to support us. I guess from my point of view, again, one of the great tragedies of the SJW movement is that they take legitimate issues. For example, everybody in I think every level of society was shocked by the death of George Floyd and saw it as an example of a misdeed and misconduct by a police officer. And that could have been something that could have been a multi-partisan effort on every level. And instead it became immediately politicized and hijacked by a movement that basically wants to impose Stalinism on the West and therefore destroyed the good faith that could have been used there, right? And this is the same problem over and over again. The biggest problem with calling everybody a racist is that you can't then call out the actual racists, and that people start being unable to be sure, if they're calling everyone a racist, then should we even worry about the actual racists anymore? And that to me is a huge issue, right? I mean, for me,
I don't think they care about being race. They don't care about real racism. I don't think. I mean,
no, they don't.
They don't care about the results. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's a perfect game in some respects if you just call everybody out racist or a transphobe or a homophobe for everything, then no one's gonna want to push back on it at all. They just recoil and shrink away, and then they can push their real agenda, which, I mean, if you look at, Black Lives Matter, their actual beliefs, they want to abolish or, I don't know, they speak out, I won't say abolish, but they speak out against, nuclear family structure, which, I mean, I think social scientists would say is probably, isn't backed up by data that's going to, help a population.
It's not backed up by the vast majority of Black people in the United States, right? I mean, you ask most Black Americans, and they would say that they want the Black families, to be stronger, not to be dismantled, right?
Right. And their other platforms are like, abolish the police, abolish, borders, like all this stuff that, everyone is trying to, now everyone wants to virtue signal their support for Black Lives Matter. And just even the name itself, it's like, oh, how can you
it's a
disagree with Black Lives Matter? But you can, because they want, now people are donating hundreds of millions of dollars to organizations that are basically set up. They want to abolish capitalism.
Well, Black Lives Matter, the movement, is directly tied to Act Blue, which is the fundraising arm of the Democratic Party.
Oh,
and this month,
there's a problem there too.
this month, Joe Biden, for the only time in the entire history of the election campaign, raised more money than Donald Trump. And the reason he did is because the money that people are donating to Black Lives Matter goes to Act Blue, which goes directly to the Democratic Party fundraising.
Is that
so
why?
if you've given money to Black Lives Matter, you've given money to the Joe Biden campaign.
Yeah, I did read about that, but is that where that boost of money came from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look up the connection between Black Lives Matter and Act Blue.
Right. Yeah. I'm aware of that. I just I didn't put two and two together when they were saying that the other day that Biden had raised more money than Trump. That totally makes sense now, because I was like, why? What's so appealing about Joe Biden? I don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's a hijacking of our culture and a hijacking of the very cultural values that we have, that makes the West such a great place, that they're turning it around and weaponizing it into a tool to try to destroy the West, right? And to try to divide people in the Western world, right? To divide people by race, by gender, by sexual preference, and all these things, in order to impose their chosen regime. Very unfortunate. Anyway, I guess we should wrap it up here.
We should.
Because we've had a good long stream, and Venture stayed even later than he usually does, which is nice. So again, everyone, be sure to support us on our Patreon, and be sure to subscribe and share this video anywhere you like. Keep an eye out. I guess over the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing 1 or 2 or 3 highlight reels of this that will be coming out. And keep sharing that stuff. Subscribe to my channel, and to hit my notification bell too if you haven't already. And be sure to check out our products. In my case, remember, if you want to support me, I do have a Patreon, but I never promote it. Instead, I would tell you to buy my games, buy my RPG Pundit Presents issues. There's now 100 of them. There's going to be 101 very soon, and there's tons of stuff there that you can find and use in your games, and a lot of them are very affordable. Even my printed products are very affordable. Lion and Dragon is pretty inexpensive. The old school companion, which is an excellent source book for any OSR game you want to make more medieval authentic, is like you can get the PDF and book for $29.95. Star Adventure, which is a complete space opera RPG, you can get the book and PDF for just $9.99. So be sure to check it out. And I guess that's it from me. Anything more to say from you, Joe?
I wish I had something to shill. I'll eventually have something to shill. But I'll just add on to yours that, Pundit, I ordered Star Adventures, but, it's going to take a while with this COVID stuff. But I did enjoy Lion and Dragon. I actually ran it at GaryCon. I paired RPG Pundit's Lion and Dragon system with an adventure written by a woke leftist, Kyle Chenier, called the Orcs of some crap. It was a terrible adventure, but the people playing it had a good time. Dressed it up on the fly, and the system was good. Everyone enjoyed it. So,
thank you very much. When you do get Star Adventure, feel free to make a review of it or something. Tell us all what you thought of it. That goes to anyone who has Star Adventure. That's always a plus.
Okay. And then finally, just before we close, I just want to apologize to all of our subscribers and listeners in the stream. I definitely will have a test of the new rig before we do our next demo, and we'll get the communications lined up way before. Oh, but also to mention too, I don't think we've really called this out anywhere. Pundit is we're going to a 2-week recording schedule, so you guys can expect every other Sunday to see a new live stream, and then over the next week I'll put 2 to 3. I'm calling them dumpster fires, but they're like little tidbits from the show to hopefully like smaller bite-sized pieces that hopefully we can get some more attract some more viewers with. So thank you for putting up with my learning curve, and I think I got it all sorted out now after this week. So thank you.
The third time will be the charm, I'm sure.
Yes, definitely. All right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and
Thank you.
check us out in a couple of weeks.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for coming.
Take care.